Good morning, friends, and welcome back to the channel. Today, in the inaugural episode of Cooking with Chris, we'll be looking at making cream biscuits. Now, biscuits are one of my favorite things to make for breakfast, and today we'll be cooking out of the Fannie Farmer cookbook. This cookbook is great for anyone who's getting into cooking because it features a variety of different foods that you can cook through, and most of the recipes are really excellent. But enough of that. Before we begin, go ahead and set your oven to 425 degrees Fahrenheit. Before you start your oven, make sure that there's a rack at the top of the oven and at the bottom of the oven, but not the very top and not the very bottom. So put it on the second and the fourth. If you don't have the second and the fourth, try and find somewhere in the middle. As that's preheating, we're going to start mixing together the ingredients. And the ingredients that you'll need for this recipe are 2 cups of flour, 1 teaspoon of salt, 1 tablespoon of baking powder, 2 teaspoons of sugar, and 1 to 1.5 cups of heavy cream. You'll also need about 8 tablespoons of butter, but we'll get to that later. For now, take a large bowl. It doesn't have to be glass. I'll just be using glass, that way it's easy to see. We're going to mix together all the dry ingredients. If you haven't measured out flour before, the reason I'm spooning it into 1 cup using the other cup is so that it stays loose. If you just scoop it out like this, you'll wind up with way too much flour and it'll throw off the recipe. Alright, and there we have 2 cups of flour. Next we'll add 1 teaspoon of salt, and 1 tablespoon of baking powder. Then we go back to the teaspoon, 2 teaspoons of sugar. Once you have all your dry ingredients together, go ahead and whisk those together. So once we have all the dry ingredients mixed together, we're going to move into adding the cream. And I like to start off by only adding about 1 cup first, and then gradually adding the other half, little by little. You don't want to have too much, or your cream biscuits will just turn into mush. So here's the first cup of cream. As it starts to really stick together, then we can add a little bit more. Once it gets to a place where most of the dough is sticking together, I usually switch to my hands. If there's still dry flour and such, that's when you need to add the cream. But if it's starting to stick together and not leaving behind a lot of flour, and that's just enough. Alright, now that we have our bowl of dough, I'll set that aside. And then if you have a clean area to work, or if you have a silicone baking mat, that can be really helpful. But if not, just find a clean place to work to spread out the dough. Take a small bowl, and then in this small bowl you'll want to add just a little bit of flour, and this flour will be used to roll out the dough and make it into biscuits. So first we'll spread some flour over the baking mat, and you can take your dough, set it right in the middle, and press it out with your fingers. You want to press firm, but not too hard. The goal is not to make it big like a pizza, but to just spread it out so it's about up to the first knuckle of your finger. So it's about 8 inches across right now, and we're going to go into our first fold. So if you take the left third of the dough and fold it over the middle, and then take the right third of the dough and fold it over the middle. And then take the top third, fold it over the middle, and roll the whole thing over so that it makes this little shape. You'll set this dough aside, reflour your surface, and grab a rolling pin. Alright, with your rolling pin, take your dough ball, put it back in the middle, and then we're going to add flour to our rolling pin. If you baked before, you may be thinking, why the rolling pin and not the ball of dough? It's because we don't want to add too much flour to the biscuits, or else we'll wind up with a flat biscuit without that texture on top. So our rolling pin's floured, and we'll roll up twice on that top third of the dough, down twice, and roll in the middle. And again, up twice, down twice, and roll in the middle. We'll go to the side twice, right side twice, in the middle. And then we repeat. If the rolling pin ever starts to stick to the dough, just add a little bit more flour to keep it moving smoothly across. Next is the fun part. If you have cookie cutters or something that allows you to cut shapes into your dough, this is a great time to pick your favorite one. Today I have a turkey. It's also the time that we introduce the butter. So go ahead and take your 8 tablespoons of butter, open up the package, and melt it down. So the butter is what's going to add that golden edge to the biscuits once they're cooked. Alright, so take your cookie cutter, cover the cutting side with flour, and press down into the dough. Don't twist or fight the dough. And if the dough's starting to stick, put it back in the flour, get it all floured up, and then keep going. With the shapes cut, we'll take them, dip them into your melted butter, make sure it's buttered on both sides, and then add it to your baking tray. And on your baking tray, we're going to stack them left to right, and then top to bottom. And then once you've removed your shape, you can redo the process with the old dough, as I've done here. So keys to keep in mind is as you're gathering the pieces of dough, you don't want to press them together or you'll overwork the dough. Rather, keep them all in their individual pieces and then press them out as you would regularly. Fold the left over the middle and the right over the left, and then down twice. And you'll have that same shape as before, a little bit smaller. And then you'll roll out. 2 up, 2 down, 2 in the middle. Once it's rolled out, we'll repeat the shape process. Get your cookie cutter and cut the shapes. As you're cutting shapes, be aware of the line of dough around the outside. If you cut over that line, you might wind up with biscuits that have unruly things going on. And there we have our final biscuit. You can continue to work the dough if you want and make another one, but at this point I figure that the dough has been worked a lot, and if you work too much, your biscuit will get tough and it won't be as pleasant to eat. Once all of your biscuits are buttered, we'll move straight over to the oven, which should already be preheated at this point. Take your tray of biscuits. You can start at the top of the oven or the bottom of the oven. Set a timer for 7 minutes. Once your timer comes off, go ahead and return to the oven. Take out your biscuits, rotate them 180 degrees, and put them on the bottom. Vice versa if you put them vice versa, but we'll set the timer again for 6 minutes. I find that while the biscuits are cooking, there's enough time to clean up your workspace. And there are the biscuits. those look lovely. Take a look at that. Nice golden brown top with some texture to them. These biscuits go great on their own, or with whipped cream and fruit, or with butter and jam. They also make great breakfast sandwiches. Anyway, that's the end of the video. If you liked it, please give it a big thumbs up and subscribe down below, and I'll see you in the next video. Hey. You want some too, don't you?
One comes around one today. They don't see things the same. Two over two out the door. Then you have magic. One comes around one today. They don't see things the same. Two over two out the door. Then you have magic. One comes around one today. They don't see things the same. Two over two out the door. Then you have magic. One comes around one today. They don't see things the same. Two over two out the door. Then you have magic. One comes around one today. They don't see things the same. Two over two out the door.